Hi, hello, happy Friday. Um, it's going to be another hot weekend here in Southern California. We're having, we seem to be having back-to-back heat waves, which is kind of a nightmare. Um, right now, I'm enjoying it's a drink that's essentially a yogurt drink. It it tastes like plain yogurt, so it's not sweet, but it's a little thicker than milk, so you can drink it through a straw. Um, and this one is uh, flavored with mint, so it's pretty refreshing. It's kind of high in fat, so I try to stay away from it. But in this weather, it's either this or ice cream. So I'm choosing this one, and yeah, it's actually really good. So if you can find it in your supermarkets, I would suggest it at some point. I can only find it in specialty stores that cater to, I guess, the Middle Eastern clientele. So because I think that's where it originates from. Anyway, on topic. In my practice, I do a lot of shadow work, which a lot of you guys do as well. And I tend to I tend to try to clump parts, uh, emotional ticks, and psychological hiccups, and those elements of my psyche that tend to trip me up. I try to essentially categorize them, kind of clump them, and then anthropomorphize them, so that I can put a face to the problem and then address it, literally face to face. That's not always successful, and sometimes I I essentially classify things incorrectly and put them together wrong, so I end up with a hybrid that wasn't supposed to exist, essentially, um, which is frequently given the problem more power than it deserves. So, um, but it's an ongoing process, of course. You can never really eliminate um, all of the skeletons of your psyche, but for those of us that do that, um, we realize that it's a day-to-day thing, and I would say it's fairly new neo-pagan in origin because of the psychology and the growing field behind there. It's less religious and philosophical so much as psychological, but we approach it magically frequently. So anyway, I wanted to share one of my one of my inner demons, one of the faces of my psyche, and I usually these things are very personal, and generally speaking, I wouldn't accept this one is more generally tied into you guys, and that that shadow form is um, the Gorgon. And for those of you who are not familiar, the Gorgons were titans of Greek mythology, and generally we are aware of three of them. Two of them were immortal. One of them, the most famous Medusa, was um, was killed by Perseus, having her head lopped off. Their ability was to look at people and turn them to stone. They are frequently depicted as having hair of venomous snakes. As far as their overall appearance, that's changed in different, or that's not really pinned down in different mythologies because most observants uh, have been turned to stone. So anyway, the myth goes essentially that Perseus was sent by King Polydectes to kill Medusa, and it, because the king was hoping that it would get rid of Perseus because he was pursuing Perseus' mother. Fun times. It's like a soap opera. And anyway, Perseus succeeds and then returns with Medusa's head to the court of King Polydectes, who asks, "Has Perseus succeeded?" And Perseus takes Medusa's head out of the bag and says, "Here it is," and turns the whole court to stone. ironic. And anyway, so the Gorgon has become essentially a shadow form face for the mental hiccup that I have when I'm dealing or facing off with smart people, um, which would include all of you, and getting up and having to do a speech, for instance, anything where I need to perform a battle of wits, for lack of a better term, with others, where my intelligence level is becoming is under the microscope compared to other people. They're voicing something, they're broaching a subject, a discussion ensues, and then it's up to me to live up to my own standards of being able to add something intelligent to the conversation, and I will frequently freeze up. This is even worse if it's public speech, as a lot of people have. It is the number one fear, where you are the only person up there, or the only one doing, speaking, and people are, the entire audience is looking at you, and they want to hear something good, essentially, because you are boring them. And yeah, I'll freeze up. Literally, I will see the hair or the aura of snakes around people, which, deep in my psyche, snakes are representative of wisdom, innate knowledge, usually of a magical nature, but doesn't have to be, which I know is not how the Greeks, what the Greeks meant when they said, venomous snakes, but it's my shadow form, so. And I will look out at the audience, or, against another, or at another, smart person, and it's essentially like I'm seeing how much smarter they are with all those snakes, and then I literally turn to stone. I'm tongue-tied. I it's brain fart or whatever. Like anything where I just can't get out what I really want to say, or it just sounds like crap. Whatever. That's why I prefer anything written versus oral communication, because it gives me time to put my thoughts together and edit, and editing is the magical thing that makes me look smarter, versus something like this where I don't know how to use the editing things, the features on my computer. So what you're listening to is what you get, and that's so. Much of last year, I was, after I'd essentially classified that shadow form as the Gorgon, I've been attempting to approach it the same way Perseus did. Attack the Gorgon. Use the shield as the mirror. Don't turn to stone. And lob off the head, and return to the court, because the court. I know it's very muddled, but the court is the intelligent people too, because they're my betters, the aristocrat, the nobility, the king's court. So they are my betters, and that's how I perceive them. And then they're using the Gorgon as a weapon against me to freeze me, and then they can win the argument, the discussion, the whatever. So I've been, before speech, or before hanging out with certain people, where I know we'll get into discussions, I would spend some time in meditation on essentially reliving the battle of Perseus and Medusa, and then returning to the court, and that's helped to a degree. So I think my classification of those mental hiccups as a Gorgon has been productive, but recently I've noticed that it's not as effective as I would like it to be. And again, a process, but I want to be more successful. And I've noticed that during the meditative work, in ritual space, etc., that when I'm at times during the fight, when I'm looking for Medusa in the reflection of the shield, that I'll catch a glimpse of my own reflection, and it's also a Gorgon. So I'm not sure, and again, I'm still processing this, but so I don't have any definite conclusions on that, but it's I'm wondering if this ongoing battle essentially that I'm having is as successful or the right approach as, say, transforming myself into the very weapon that I'm attempting to decapitate. So essentially, should I be less worried about how I perceive other people perceiving me, and realize that other people are just as concerned, and when they're talking to me, and they don't want to seem stupid either, and then try to approach it from kind of an even playing field rather than as a soldier trying to fight uphill constantly against quote unquote superior forces. I don't know. Anyway, so I just yeah, that's kind of what I'm dealing with a particular shadow form, the Gorgon. Is it just my shadow form? Should I become the, the very weapon? Etc. Etc. Uh, but that's kind of what I'm going through. I don't know if anybody else has had similar experiences. Again, speech, talking in public, addressing a public audience is, one of the biggest fears, and maybe some of you have been attacking the same inner demon, and I was wondering if any of you have a strategy that I might be able to adopt, or some insight, or if you're working with some other, you know, um, shadow forms, would you like to share them? I know, I mean, this is the only one again that I would be inclined to, address publicly. Um, but maybe you have one that you're willing to share with a general audience, and share your insights on how you've approached it, and where it maybe not where it has not been quite as successful. So yeah, if you feel up to it, if you feel like sharing, I would love to hear about it. And um, yeah, so I'll just leave it at that. And again, if you're able to find yogurt drink, mint flavored, you know, I highly recommend it. It's kind of a unique flavor, but you might like it. Anyway, so hopefully, I'll be able to hear from some of you. Anyway, enjoy your weekend, and I'll talk to you all later. Cheers.